offering condolence to Professor K.C. Pandey, sir. Now, let me speak a few words on the academic pursuits of today's speaker, Dr. Indoo Ma'am. Dr. Indoo Ma'am is working as professor and head, Department of Philosophy, and Director, Faculty Development Center, Bombay, India, at HNB Gorwal Central University, Srinagar, Uttarakhand. And Professor Indoo Ma'am had her graduation from BHU, Varanasi, post-graduation from University of Allahabad, and PhD from JNU, New Delhi. And she is having a very brilliant academic career throughout. I don't want to reflect all of her academic career, and she is working in the same university from 1991, and she has a teaching experience of more than 30 years in the university in teaching the PG students, and she is constantly involved in teaching research, and she has supervised more than 15 scholars, and she has accomplished more than 5 research projects from the Ministry of Culture, Government of India, and she has published a couple of books and many research papers for the noble cause of the students and scholars of philosophy, and she has attended a number of national and international seminars inside and outside the country, and her publication is many, not possible to read out all of her publications, but her publication includes the issue of epistemology, reflective and critical thinking, environment, ecology, scientific temper, leadership, ethical issues, gender discrimination and women empowerment, linguistic, communication skills, research methodology, value education, mental sufferings, abnormal personality development and management. And she has visited many countries to deliver talks on different issues of philosophy and ethics. And with this, I would like to welcome Indoo Ma'am to our philosophy family. She belongs to philosophy family, and she has delivered many talks in her family, and she has also invited many professors of the country to philosophy family, and she is a link of linking so many professors to the philosophy family. We are grateful to ma'am, and I also welcome our host and convener of philosophy family, Professor Pramod Kumar Das. I welcome him. I welcome also Dr. K. Umnam Rao, the moderator of today's session, Dr. Rao. I welcome again all the scholars, all the teachers of philosophy across the country to be connected with us. Thanks everybody, and I offer a hearty welcome to all of you. Again, I call upon Professor Indoo Ma'am to deliver a talk on sympathy and empathy. Welcome, madam. Over to madam, sir. Over to madam.
Okay. A very good evening to all of you. Am I audible and visible?
Yes, audible and visible, ma'am.
Okay. First of all, I would like to express my deep sense of condolence, as you said, for Professor K.C. Pandey, who is no more with us. It's really shocking for me, and while preparing for this talk, it has intensified my topic, rather. Because I feel for him, I knew him personally, I knew his family members, so it was just shocking news for him, for me. And I really feel for his wife and his kids. So with these words, I would like to start And before I would like to start my topic, I'm really grateful and honored to be invited on this platform. Okay, 1 year back, we get connected. And from then onward, Philosophy Family is continuing its venture. Continuing the academic exercises for 1 year, more than 1 year, is not a joke. On various issues, not only on the academic and research-oriented issues, but the Philosophy Family has taken up the lectures invited by the resource persons and philosophy expert for the syllabi meant for the student of graduation and post-graduation. And that videos which you have uploaded on the YouTube and provided to the speaker has become very beneficial for the student and the teachers as well. Because before the class, they can be provided to the student, and in classroom, it can be used for the discussion. So, providing material is very important in the classroom teaching, and you are catering that need by preparing the lectures on the syllabi. Thank you very much for that. And I can see that many of my friends like Amit and my respected brother Dr. Alok Tandon is here. Apart from that, many of the respected professors have joined this forum, and I would humbly request them that I am going to speak on sympathy and empathy with my intense emotion. Maybe due to disturbed situation or disturbed mindset due to loss of K.C. Pandey, I may not be very coordinated, but I'll try my level best to put my ideas for the discussion, because this is the forum where I don't tell only, I learn a lot also. So with these remarks, I would like to start my deliberation while talking about sympathy and empathy as a moral virtue. As a prelude, I would start with the current scenario of pandemic of corona. It is taking many lives. It has shattered human mindset for the last 1 year, and the second wave of intense corona thing and many death toll has really shocked us. But at the same time, we can see that many of the system, including political administration and administrative staff, medical and paramedical staff, we need to view whether they are taking the situation with empathy and sympathy or not. I am not against any political parties or in favor of any political parties, but it needs to be viewed. At the same time, the duty of people who are careless about their protection measures can be discussed in between, and I can say that whenever the adverse situation is there, I am taking this sympathy and empathy as a moral virtue. But before that, I would like to make a point that moral virtues becomes more important when the situations are adverse. When we cannot take forward the normal activities of our daily routine, and when we need to support each other, that time sympathy and empathy become more important. And I would like to start with the thing that whenever the adverse situation is in front of us, we used to see 5 kind of responses. And I would narrate that responses like antipathy. Suppose to describe antipathy, we can take an incident that a bus met an accident. Many people died in that. But we are analyzing the cause of the accident. like bus driver may be drunk, like it may be over speed, something like that. We are not thinking about the loss of human life, but we are talking that this kind of incident happened due to the wrong practice or wrongdoing of the particular individual. Apathy, hell bothered with the situation. Whatever the situation may be, I am not concerned. These two cannot be taken as the moral response to the situation. After that, what we are having, sympathy. We are sympathizing to the person who has faced the challenge, who has been hurt in the situation, or who has lost something. Empathy. Empathy is a kind of response in which we are supposed to feel the same the sufferer has felt. At the same time, this requires, in our further discourse, I'll make it the clarification that this requires a kind of cognition, a kind of emotive response, and a kind of action or effectiveness. And after that, it becomes compassion. That is, you are compassionate about the person who has suffered. And these three, sympathy, empathy, and compassion, may be taken as moral virtues. Since I'm taking these things as a moral virtue, I would like to first clarify what virtue is. Virtue is a moral excellence. In very simple word, a virtue is a trait or quality that is deemed to be morally good and thus is valued as a foundation of principle and good moral being. Personal virtues or characteristics valued as promoting collective and individual goodness, greatness. In other words, it is a behavior that shows high moral standards, doing what is right and avoiding what is wrong. And virtue ethics involves shaping and correcting people's behavior while also being flexible and adaptable to grey amorphous situation and changing taste and sentiments. It is in this sense I am going to discuss sympathy as a moral virtue. And from sympathy, I will be taking forward how the notion of empathy has developed in philosophy, touching up some philosophers and selecting only those references which are useful for describing sympathy and empathy. I am not taking their holistic philosophy. I am not indulging myself on the criticism they have invited for their theories. So, first of all, I would like to explain or make clear what is sympathy in common, what is the meaning of sympathy in common sense. Sympathy, feeling bad for someone else because of something that has happened to them. We often talk about it and feel sympathetic when someone has died. We have the recent incident and something bad has happened, saying give my sympathy or I really feel for them. Apart from this, the etymological meaning of sympathy comes from that the word sympathy is made up of the Greek word which means together, and pathos, which refers to feeling or emotion. Sympathy in the full sense also requires a representation of the other as source of the first representation, conceived to belong to the other person. This is from Treatise of Human Nature. Merriam-Webster Dictionary describes sympathy as an affinity, association, or relationship between persons or things wherein whatever affects one similarly affect the other, mutual or parallel susceptibility or a condition brought about it, unity or harmony in action or effect, every part is in complete sympathy with the scheme as a whole. The second meaning is given inclination to think or feel alike. Emotional or intellectual accord in sympathy with their goals, feeling of loyalty, tendency to favor or support Republican sympathizes. The third meaning given therein is the act or capacity of entering into or sharing the feeling of interest or another, the feeling or mental state brought about by such sensitivity have sympathy for poor. The fourth meaning is the correlation existing between bodies capable of communicating their vibrational energy to one another through some medium. While talking about the sympathy from the philosophical root, we are reminded by David Hume, who describes sympathy is the perception, understanding, and reaction to the distress or need of another life form. According to Hume, this sympathetic concern is driven by a switch in viewpoint from a personal perspective to the perspective of another group or individual who is in need. David Hume explained that this is the case because the minds of all men are similar in their feelings and operations, and that the motion of one communicates itself to the rest, so that as affections readily pass from one to another, they beget corresponding movements. David Hume has at least four distinct meanings of sympathy, and these developed along with his thinking about the foundation of ethics. The first one is sympathy means functions in communicability of affect. The second one is it encompasses what is often described as emotional contagion, the communicability of affect without the inclusion of the idea or other individual as its source. The third one is it encompasses the power of suggestion. And the fourth one is it comes to include an element of benevolence. Self-interest and benevolence has been a key point of discussion in the ethics. By the time Hume writes his essays of the delicacy of taste and passion, he assimilates all the advantages of human relation of sympathy, such as friendship, intimacy, interpersonal warmth to delicacy of the taste. And according to Hume, the ethical approbation of an obligation of those at a great distance for me are no less strong than those close at hand. Further, the balance of impartiality between those who are near and dear and those who are far from us needs to be restored by appealing to an unbiased ideal observer. And in turn, this sets up a tension between the sympathetic observer of the moral agent and the ideal unbiased one. Unbiased one does not mean unsympathetic, yet it does not mean wholly sympathetic either. And this is an issue of the debate. The ideal observer and sympathetic one are complementary at best and possibly even contrary. Being sympathetic reduces distance between individuals, and being an ideal observer creates distances. In this reference, John Rawls, in his magisterial theory of justice, contains section on features of the moral sentiment and moral psychology, which includes a discussion on sympathy and the impartial sympathetic spectator. Man's natural capacity for sympathy, suitably generalized, provides the perspective from which they can reach understanding on common conception of justice. Taking this debate further on, Thomas Nagel, in his book The Possibility of Altruism, argues, in effect, to say, act so as to reduce the pain a person in the world. Depending on one's perspective, this is a special case by way of generalization of the interested maxim to act so as to reduce my own pain. Along with, I am in the world with others, we are all others persons. For example, in being altruistic, both my own pain and that of the other are regarded impersonal. Actions that reduce my pain remain self-interested in an obvious way. I am no longer in pain. Acts that reduce the pain of the other are just as impersonal version of my acting to reduce the pain experienced personally. In Thomas Nagel's works, he writes, any justification ends finally with the rationally gracious presence of the emotion of sympathy. If that conditions were not met, one would simply have no reason to be mad. Here sympathy means pity or compassion or benevolence, rather than the possibility of communicating any possible effect or sensation, which was Hume's initial and primary meaning of sympathy. Michael Stoll, in his book Ethics of Care and Empathy, took forward this discussion and finds in empathy the basis for an ethics of caring, and that provides the basis of moral sentimentalism. And he is basing his argument mainly on Hume's thesis. With an occasional nod to Smith, Slot shifts the analysis from an evaluation of behavior to the moral worth of agents engaging in action. One's ability to empathize defines the boundary of human community, or as Slot puts it, provides cement of the moral universe. Slot finds significant inspiration in Hudson's idea of a moral sense of approval or disapproval. Slot then substitutes empathy for that moral sense, however, with significant conditions and qualifications. In this reference, it is worth mentioning Adam Smith, the theory of moral sentiments. People naturally have regard for others, as he says, and this regard guides their feelings and behaviors. Smith uses sympathy as we use empathy today. Sympathy does not mean agreement with how another feels or acts, but rather an understanding or sharing of what the feelings and motives of other are or what they should be. But why does it matter that we naturally sympathize with one another? How do we translate the ability to put ourselves in another's shoes into concrete moral judgments? This needs a clarification. And Smith describes 4 sources of moral approval, 4 dimensions along which we can judge action. First, we sympathize with the motive of the agent. Secondly, we enter into the gratitude of those who receive the benefit of his actions. Thirdly, we observe that his conduct has been agreeable to the general rules by which those two sympathizers generally act. And last of all, when we consider such actions as making a part of a system of behavior which tends to promote the happiness either of the individual or of the society, they appear to derive a beauty from this utility, not unlike that which we ascribe to any well-contrived machine. He moved forward to discuss empathy, but here we need to understand the difference between sympathy and empathy. And for this, I have taken a TED talk made by Dr. Brent Brown, and she explained that sympathy is to see someone in a deep hole, but remaining on higher ground and taking to them from above. The sympathetic person may also try to simply put a silver lining on the other person's situation instead of acknowledging the person's pain. Conversely, empathy is feeling with the person. It's climbing down the hole to sit beside them, making yourself vulnerable to sincerely connect with them. The empathetic person will recognize the person's struggle without minimizing it. In brief, empathy means experiencing someone else's feelings. It comes from the German term influence or feeling into. It requires an emotional component of really feeling what the other person is feeling. Sympathy, on the other hand, means understanding someone else's suffering. It is more cognitive in nature and keeps a certain distance. When we are feeling what another person feels, we are experiencing empathy. And in this reference, some note has been made that thanks to our brain's mirror neurons, empathy may arise automatically when we witness someone in pain. But what about when we don't automatically feel the sensation of another? That is where our imagination kicks in. We have most likely heard the phrase, put yourself in someone else's shoes. That is the other route to empathy. By the way, empathy is not reserved for unpleasant feeling only. One can feel empathy when one witnesses joy too. Is it not great when someone walks in the room smiling and makes you smile? And here I would like to make it clear that when we are discussing the notion of empathy, this in philosophy, it has been taken in the philosophy of art or aesthetic. And it was initiated by the Theodore Lipps, who was probably the translator of the German version of Hume Treatise of Human Nature. And he uses the German word influence. And here the term empathy meant for understanding the feeling of an artist or a sculpturist, and the person who is evaluating or viewing or appreciating the piece of art is on the same parameter on which the creator has been. So this kind of theory, it has been given by Theodore Lipps, and in that sense, the term empathy is used to refer to a range of perceptual, cognitive, emotional and behavioral phenomena, and the presence of a conceptual ambiguity, because it's not clear-cut direction that in which direction, if we think we appreciate or we cognize, the empathy feeling is identified. So it's very difficult to define empathy containing the entire concept or entire notion which empathy should conclude. Again, two meaning has been given: the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, experiencing the feeling in the similar way, thoughts and experiencing of another of either the past or present event without having the feeling or thought, and experience fully communicated in an objectively explicit manner, and also the capacity to perceive it. And second one is the imaginative projection of the subjective state into an object so that the object appears to be infused with it. This is the entire notion being captured in the definition. And on that basis, the level of empathy can be described or discussed or understood. And renowned psychologists Daniel Goleman and Paul Ekman, these two were related or associated with the notion of emotional intelligence, which has become very popular in the 20th century, late 20th century, and now it has been used in the teaching method as well. They have identified three components of empathy, that is cognitive, emotive, and compassionate. Cognitive empathy is simply knowing how the other person feels and what they might be thinking, sometimes called perspective taking. If you imagine yourself in your friend's shoe, you know she is likely to be feeling sad, as well as anxious because she relies on that income to pay her student loans. However, having only cognitive empathy keeps you at a distance from your friend. To truly connect with your friend, you need to share their feeling. And this is where emotional empathy comes. In between, I would like to narrate a small story where the cognitive empathy is taken into account in the teaching learning method. And a very small story given by Guru Gopal Das, who is narrating a story of a teacher and a student. Teacher is going to classroom and he is teaching numerical mathematics to the student of class 1 or 2. And he is pointing a particular student called Arnav, that Arnav, if I give you 2 mango and another 2 mango, how many mangoes will you have? He said, I'll have 5. Then he said, okay, if I give you 2 banana at one time and 2 banana at another time, it is going, how many it is going to be? He said 4. The teacher was very happy that the lesson which is being taught is conceived by the student. He is repeating another example, that if I give you 2 apple and 2 apple twice, how many? The student again said 4. Teacher is coming back to the first example, that if I give you 2 mango at 2 mango, then how many mangoes you are going to have? And then he said that 5. Teacher was perturbed. He was confused. He was not conceiving the situation why the student is understanding numerical counting in the terms of banana and apple, but not in terms of mango. And then he started searching the reason. And it was simple reason. The student said that because I have got a mango in my bag from beforehand. So many things are not understood if we are not aware of the situation of the person in front of us. There, the emotional intelligence in terms of empathy is required. The emotional empathy is when you feel physically along with the other person as though their emotions were contagious. This type of empathy can also extend to physical sensations, which is why we cringe when someone else stops there too. In this case, you would look towards the identifying a situation where you were similarly anxious about the future. The situation itself need to be identical as resulting from the situation or the same. Now coming to the compassionate empathy. With this kind of empathy, we not only understand a person's predicament or feel with them, but are spontaneously moved to help if needed. And it is said that it is the balance between cognitive and emotional empathy that enables us to act without being overcome. with the feeling or jumping straight into a problem solving process. And I'm reminded by a story for explaining this compassionate empathy, which has been viral on the Facebook, and that is the story of Kishore Kantiwari from Varanasi, who is the key person in running the bread bank at Varanasi. And he has taken over this job for the last 1 year during Corona period. Unfortunately, he is no more, and his death was due to Corona. But his high sense of empathy was seen in the video being viral on the Facebook. And he said that if Corona is threatening our life, it is not only it is not only my, it is threatening the life of the entire human being living with us. The patient in the hospitals, the poor people who is sitting on the street. And the mechanism he opted to act on the basis of his empathetic feeling to collect the food from the occasions like marriages or the death ceremony, to collect the food and bread and distribute it among the needy one. And he was never repented for that. He was rather enthusiastic in his last speech, and he said that this Corona may defeat me, I may not be here, but the humanity will win if we have the empathetic feeling or sympathy for the human being. In his speech or in many of the other speech, sympathy and empathy are used interchangeably. But philosophically, we have seen that these two terms are rather very different in emotions, in conceptual analysis, and in action taken on the basis of these emotions. Because the compassionate emotion becomes the source of action as well. And the compassion kicks empathy and sympathy up to the height. When one is compassionate, one feels the pain of another, or one recognizes that the person is in pain. And at this level, it is sympathy. And then one does what one can do to elevate the person's suffering. Here, he is conceiving the suffering as his own suffering, and that becomes the empathy. As its Latin roots, compassion means to suffer with. When you are compassionate, you are not running away from the suffering. You are not feeling overwhelmed by suffering. You are not pretending the suffering does not exist. When you are practicing compassion, you can stay present with suffering. The very vital question comes to the mind here, that we say that empathy is a positive thing. Empathy comes to the mind. It is cognitive, it is emotive, it is affective, action oriented. But how the act of empathy can be identified? This is a big question. And here I got direction from Rogers Carl R. and he has given a theory of therapy, personality and interpersonal relationship. And he gives two measures. The state of empathy or being empathic is to perceive the internal frame of reference of another with accuracy and with the emotional components and meanings which pertains hereto, as if one were the person, but without ever losing the as if conditions. Thus, it means to sense the hurt or the pleasure of another as he senses it, and to perceive the causes thereof as he perceives them, but without ever losing the recognition that it is if I were hurt or pleased or so forth. If this, as if quality is lost, then the state is one of the identification. And this concept of empathy is taken into the notion of emotional intelligence, as I says earlier also. And in emotional intelligence, apart from empathy, there are 5 more measures, that is active listening, self-awareness, emotional control, self-motivation, and relationship skills. While analyzing these 6 measures of emotional intelligence, I can see and we can visualize that empathy is in the center. Because unless and until, if you are not an active listener, you won't perceive the very mindset of the other person or the person in front of you. The second one is self-awareness. Unless and until you are not aware that you are ready to perceive the point of view of the other person, the empathy is not possible. Emotional control, it may be outburst, but empathy requires the positive action as well. If you are merely emotionally empathetic to the person who is suffering, you may not be able to perform the action which may be known as the empathy. For empathy, the action is required. And for that action, the suffering of the person in front of you is motivating you. It means you are perceiving and you are getting motivated on yourself. And that becomes the crux of the empathy and relationship skill. So empathy becomes the crux of the emotional intelligence narrated by the Daniel Goleman. And from that point of view, here I can say that empathy is a core concept in the aesthetic, is a core concept in the moral virtue concept, and is a core concept in the emotional intelligence, which is meant for managing your relationship in your surroundings and with yourself as well. And if I'm saying that empathy and sympathy is a moral virtue, I need to give arguments for that. Because moral virtue is the name which I have described in the beginning itself as the excellence of behavior. And excellence of behavior or any action is narrated and described by the consequences which they are yielding. And empathetic behavior have got positive consequences. And I got it from the management books. And those management books highlighted 5 kinds of consequences of empathetic behavior. And the first one is health benefit. And that management book says that, did you know that one of the best things you can do for your health is develop empathy? It may sound surprising, but compassionate people are better equipped to handle stress than their non-empathetic peers. Research has shown that by empathizing with others, the close bonds we form with others helps us develop healthy coping mechanism towards stress. Conversely, those who have not learned to be empathetic often have second-hand stress or negative emotions picked up from others without realizing it. Even if you think that taking on the emotions of others could bring you too much pain, the opposite is often true. Compassionate people are happier and experience lower rates of depression or anxiety. They are often in better shape and have a strong immune system, which leads to not only a happier but a healthier life. The second benefit of empathetic behavior is improved communication skill. Empathy is all about getting connected in a true manner to the person in front of you, and it involves picturing how another person thinks or feels. Learning how to have it can significantly strengthen your communication skills by learning to put yourself in the perspective of others. You can find ways to explain your own perspective in a way that best resonates in that situation. Empathy can limit misunderstanding because you will be able to do better what someone means when they say or write something. Learning to empathize can help you decode non-verbal clues a little easier. Empathetic people may pay more attention to those around them and pick up on body language, and by factoring in those clues, you will be able to recognize what they are thinking even better and respond accordingly. The third benefit is work benefit. Stress relief and enhanced communication skill are only two of the many reasons everyone should bring empathy into the workplace. The give and take involved in corporate culture and negotiation can feel like a battle if both sides don't have empathy. But when everyone the meeting with a compassionate mindset, they are more likely to come to a conclusion that benefits themselves and their customers. Empathy leads to teamwork, one of the cornerstone of any successful venture. Teams who shows respect and concern for one another are more likely to trust and value the input of everyone involved. In addition, team members who might not otherwise feel comfortable speaking up will feel like their voices are both valued and understood. And when challenges arise, they will be able to recognize each team member's point of view and find a solution faster. Best of all, having empathetic employees is one of the best ways to create a healthy work environment. Supervisors treat their workers with more compassion, and lower level employees respect their bosses, and all employees work harder towards their company mission. Empathy makes the office a happier place to be where each person works not because they have to, but because they want to. The fourth benefit of empathetic and sympathetic behavior is pro-social behavior. As we all are human beings, we all are wired to need close, meaningful relationship. Anything that helps us from those bonds benefits others and ourselves. For that reason, all of us are born with at least some capacity for empathy. The better we can hone our compassion for others, the stronger our social skills and ability to connect with others can become. The importance of empathy transcends personal relationships and holds our communities together. Many sociologists have theorized that empathy is one of the greatest keys to the survival of our species. When everyone is looking out for one another, we are better able to address threats of our species and progress as a society. While some are born with a more innate capacity for empathy than others, it is never too late to practice this valuable social skill. The more you deliberately try to understand and show kindness towards others, the larger your capacity for empathy will grow over time. And the last bit of positive consequence of empathetic behavior is it decreases negativity in the entire world. So often when we read the news, we are overwhelmed with the calamities affecting people all around the world. For example, nowadays we are disturbed by the death and the corona things. The virus is disturbing each and everyone. Taking on all this pain is a burden too large for any person to bear. But showing compassion for others can help replace the bad things in the world with good things over time. As I quoted the example of Kishore Kantiwari from Varanasi. Even small actions can have a great impact, and the little things we do for one another can improve our communities on a local and global level. Now that one knows how empathy can revolutionize one's life and one's community, it is better to use the simple tips of behavior to become a more empathetic person. And these simple tips are like, when talking with another person, try to listen more than you speak. Instead of planning your own responses while the other person's talking, think about what they are saying and how they might feel. Focus on the similarities between you and others instead of differences. If you have trouble connecting with someone, try to think of 5 things you and the other person have in common. Examine any biases that might inhibit your ability to connect with others. Challenge any prejudices based on gender, age, race, or other factors that distance yourself from another person. Start every day by listing as many things that you are grateful for as possible. Gratitude helps us appreciate the people around us and view them with greater empathy. What I talked about empathy, it gives an impression that our ancient literature are less bothered about this concept. Maybe it is my ignorance that I have not explored from the ancient literature, but there could be many references which could be taken to understand the notion of empathy. And one of the reference from Plato, when he is distinguishing between his notion of opinion and knowledge in the Republic, it has been said that opinion is really the lowest form of human knowledge. It requires no accountability, no understanding. The highest form of knowledge is empathy, for it requires us to suspend our egos and live in another world. It requires profound purpose, larger than the self kind of understanding. There are few things which I need to put emphasis in this definition. The one is empathy suspends our ego. Ego is the problem and is the central thing which creates the problem for each and everyone. The moment we start thinking about the person in front of us, our ego is melted. The ego of the person in front of us is also melted, and we get connected. And you see, self-interest is a very petty thing and very natural thing which everybody is guided by that. But the moment we start thinking about the other person, we have a larger objective, larger aim of the human being, larger purpose, a meaningful insights into it, and the understanding which is very far away from the self-interest. And this has been appreciated from the time immemorial. I am reminded by a story which I read in my childhood as the moral story, and that was of the Gautam Buddha childhood story. And it was a story, they went to the forest for wandering into the forest with a friend called Devdutt. And Devdutt was fond of killing the birds. He killed a swan. And he was happy that he has the swan has fell down. Siddharth felt empathetic and compassionate. And he went, he held the bird, he treated, and then these two fought about it, that who is right is first on this swan. And they went to the king, and the king decided that the one who has saved, the one who has felt empathetic for the bird, has much more right than the one who has killed. So empathy has been in our moral values. The only thing is that in our Indian tradition, we still need to explore this empathy, and this is project we need to take up. And this is further work we need to do. With this, I would like to conclude. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. It's over to you, Kailash Chandra.
Okay, thanks, ma'am. Thanks so much, ma'am, for your stimulating and reflective talk on sympathy and empathy as the moral virtues. Today, your speech is very relevant to the present situation, that is the pandemic situation, and your talk is very relevant for all of us. And you have made a very conceptual analysis of the cardinal ethical virtues like sympathy and empathy. and your clarity of understanding has amazed us. And the way of presenting, while presenting in the ethical dimension of the two virtues, you have honored us, inspired, and motivated us, and how to cultivate the altruistic behavior in our practical life. And your novel way of presenting through the examples has made us compassionate, to be more positive, to be more productive in our behavior in relation to society, to develop our connectivity with others. Now, it's time to listen to Sri Pramod Kumar Das. Let me now call upon Sri Pramod Kumar Das, our convener, to put his observation and synopsis on the talk of Indoo ma'am. Over to Pramod. Over to Pramod.
Namaskar, namaskar, sir.
Namaskar.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes, audible.
Thank you. This talk of Madam was wonderful. We learned so many things from this lecture. Madam spoke of the moral and immoral dimensions of dimensions in details. So far as the immoral dimensions are concerned, Madam spoke of apathy and antipathy. In case of apathy, we think that I am not the cause of other suffering, therefore I am indifferent. Suppose we see an accident on the road and that accident is not caused by me and I am not a party to that accident, then I have no role at all, because I don't want to put myself in trouble. Therefore, I just avoid it because I am not the cause. Therefore, the attitude of indifference motivates me to avoid the situation. This is an immoral dimension that is called apathy. That I am not the cause, therefore I am indifferent. The second thing is, another dimension of immorality is that antipathy, where I am the cause of other suffering. For example, I caused the accident. I am involved in that accident. I am a party to that accident. And in spite of that, I am avoiding the situation. I am quit the war. I am quit that place. I am the cause, and maybe accidentally I am the cause, but I don't appear there as the agent, as the cause. I escape myself. This is another dimension of immorality where I am the cause of other suffering, that is called antipathy. Similarly, in moral dimension, because man is morally conscious, man has two moral sentiments. One is sympathy and the other is empathy. In sympathy, we exercise our cognitive ability to understand the suffering of others. There I am not the cause of the suffering, directly or indirectly, but the man is suffering and I understand his suffering. Here there is the duality between the observer and the observed. That yes, it is your suffering, I know, and I am able to know, I am able to understand your suffering. That is also a great thing. Many people do not understand others' problems. At least we understand. That is also a moral perspective. That is also a moral merit. That I could understand your problem. This is sympathy. That means we are cognitively sound because we are rational, and I am rational enough to address your problem, to understand your problem. And what happens in this case? Here we give suggestions that you do this, you don't do this. go this way or avoid all these things, take this medicine or take the such precautions, etc. So I think that the party is the second to me, and I am second to that party, and I am giving suggestion. So there is a duality between myself and the victim. So I can understand and I can give suggestion. But there is another higher dimension of morality, that is empathy. In empathy, what happens? There is no duality between the agent and the victim. There is no duality between I and you. There I am you. Your feeling, your suffering is my suffering. Your pain is my pain. Your happiness is my happiness. Your problem is my problem. This is the highest dimension of moral virtues. So that is also a human possibility. It is not. This is not something divine. It is also human. That is the human possibility. And when one goes beyond his cognitive ability, and he becomes involved with the problems of others, we can here we can here we can discuss it philosophically, that how it is possible that I can feel your pain as my pain. How can I identify myself with you? How can there duality between you and me will disappear? How is it possible? So we here we can give an example of the mother and child. When a child is crying, everybody is trying to pacify the child by giving different types of dolls, or different in different ways they try to pacify the child. But the child is not pacified at all. The child is still crying. So at that situation, mother just comes and tries to hug the child. When mother hugs the child, the rhythm of the heartbeat of the child and the mother sickness, there is a harmony between the rhythm of heartbeat of the child and the mother. That happens so intensely, the child becomes small.
Betul yang lain ya. Takut tak serius tuh. Mau cancel kalau factor itu.